Good morning, Garland, Nixon, and Scott Ritter here to talk. We're going to talk Ukraine. We're going to talk Gaza and international geopolitics. Let's talk. Good morning, Garland, Nixon, and Scott Ritter here. Don't forget, it's very important that you go to scottritterextra.com. That's scottritterextra.com, where you can find all of Scott's good work. And of course, don't forget, while you're there, make sure you contribute to the cause so Scott can contribute his travels and his investigative journalism. And of course, Maverick's trying to eat him out of house and home. Probably chew up half the house too if he can get away with it. So we might have some furniture to replace at the hands of Maverick. A lot of things got to be done. ScottRitterExtra.com helps Scott out. And of course, you see everything scrolling across the bottom. If you can buy me a coffee or Patreon or whatever the hell, thanks. All right. If you can't, just share everything on your social media platform. Scott, let's talk about the fall of Marinka. What that means. I mean, there's various ways you can look at it. One of the things I think that is important is that they've been using that as a platform to shell, Donetsk, to shell some regions in eastern, in what is now Russia, and that there's certainly a victory to that. But your thoughts on the overall, what does it mean strategically on the battlefield, et cetera, all of the above?
Well, Marinka, is a town at 9,000, sort of located near Donetsk, the major, the capital city of the Donetsk People's Republic, sort of the heart of the Donbass. And since 2014, Ukrainians have been using Marinka as a base from which they shell the civilian population of Donetsk, and they've killed thousands, including hundreds of children. And so, there's and it's also been turned into one of the most heavily fortified places, on the line of contact between Russia and Ukraine. Extensive hardened fortifications, mutually supportive fortifications, underground passageways, just designed to absorb a lot of damage. Russian forces, or I should say Donetsk forces, launched an attack in June of 2015, which briefly occupied Marinka, but they were beaten back. And at that point in time, the Ukrainians just dug in, like they did in Advika, like they did in Bakhmut, like they did along the entire front with the Donetsk and Lugansk. Marinka has been the source of the shells that are killing civilians. So Russia capturing Marinka is a huge moral victory. It doesn't mean that the shelling of Donetsk will end. The Ukrainians have weapons that can range Donetsk from other locations, and until Russia clears out the totality of all the Ukrainian forces from the Donetsk People's Republic, Donetsk will continue to be at risk. But the mortars, some of the artillery that's been dug in, that's gone now. It's been taken by Russia. Not only that Russia has taken perhaps one of the most heavily fortified areas along this line. I mean, it's up there with Bakhmut and Advika in terms of the level of fortification. The Ukrainians, of course, can prepare new defenses, and they're digging in behind that. But these defenses will never replicate what was done at Marinka. And if Russia, Vladimir Putin has directed Shoigu, the defense minister, to exploit this victory to push deeper into Donbass. And so by breaking the Ukrainian defenses at Marinka, if the Russians can sustain their momentum, they can break in and they can create new operational opportunities by dictating the pace of the battle through maneuver warfare. We'd be transitioning from positional warfare into maneuver warfare. And this appears to be the direction that the Russian leadership wants the Russian army to go. So this victory at Marinka, everybody been talking about Advika. Well, Advika was it is still an ongoing battle, But Advika had turned into a classic meat grinder where, Russia has, quasi enveloped it, encouraging the Ukrainians to either withdraw or continue to pour in manpower to be destroyed. And that battle's ongoing. The meat grinder operation is continuing. Marinka didn't develop in that way. Russia actually just pushed in and took the town, old-fashioned, street fighting, building by building, block by block, bloody fighting, and they took the town. And this is the first major breach of the Ukrainian defenses. And we had talked about this all along. We said this was going to happen, and there will be more breaches going on. But this is the first one, and this is the beginning, because if Russia exploits this, they will require Ukraine to divert resources they no longer have. Again, we've talked about this. As Russian forces push out, they've got to be contained. Where are those forces going to come from? Well, they're out of brigades. They would have to steal. They rob Peter to pay Paul, bring forces down in to contain the Russian advance, which creates weak points along the lines that Russia will then be able to exploit by committing some of the hundreds of thousands of troops they have yet to commit to this battle. So Marinka has the potential of being the beginning of the unraveling of the Ukrainian defenses that we've been projecting for some time.
And your thoughts on recent discussions? It's been highly reported that there's been discussions at the highest levels of the Russian command and government. Vladimir Putin has made comments about basically how far they want to go, what they're going to take. Speaking of Odessa, the Dnieper River, etc., based on the various things, we've heard various people make various comments, and I think Vladimir Putin's the one you probably should pay attention to the most. But based on what you've heard, what are your thoughts as the end point as to what the Russians see? They just, and I know this is just speculation, but putting together the things that you've had, what do you think the Russians end up looking at, or is that still fluid?
No, I think Russia has put together a 3-year budget. It's a budget for victory, I think they call it. And that takes them through to 2025. Vladimir Putin, again, a man whose words need to be listened to very carefully when he speaks. He's not superfluous with the use of his language. When he says something, there's a weight behind that. So when Vladimir Putin says that Odessa is a Russian city, I think that means that Odessa is going to be a Russian city. And it reflects the reality that, we just take a look at what just happened. The Crimean port city of Feodosia was just struck by what appears to be long-range Storm Shadow missiles that the British provided Ukraine. And they were launched somewhere in the vicinity of Odessa. It hit a ship, dramatic explosion, PR victory for Ukraine. But the bottom line is Ukraine has made Sevastopol, the port, untenable for the Russians for major naval operations. It's just not worth Russia to put major capital ships there and then roll the dice every night to see whether or not the Ukrainians are going to get a lucky drone strike in or a missile strike and take out a ship. So Russia's had to redeploy its force throughout the Black Sea. It doesn't mean that the ships can't sortie in the Black Sea, fire their missiles, but it means that as long as Ukraine has Odessa, and as long as Ukraine is governed by a government that has pro-NATO tendencies and anti-Russian tendencies, Crimea will be an untenable situation. The Sevastopol will be untenable. Now, if I were putting on my Russian hat and saying, well, then what does this mean we have to do? The answer is obvious. It means that Odessa has to be taken over by Russia. The entire Black Sea coast has to be taken over by Russia. Ukraine has to be denied access to the Black Sea simply to protect Crimea, which is the strategic centerpiece of Russia's Black Sea presence. This is a military reality, and I think Putin has now turned it into a political objective. And so I think Russia will take Odessa. And if you're taking Odessa, that means you're linking up with Transnistria, which solves another major geopolitical and military problem. But now, okay, you can't just take Odessa. To take Odessa, you're going to have to, first of all, recapture Kherson, the right bank of Kherson. And if you're going to take the right bank of Kherson, you got to take Mykolaiv, the province of the city north of that. And if you're going to take Mykolaiv, you got to secure Dnipropetrovsk. And if you're going to secure Dnipropetrovsk, you've got to anchor it on Kharkov. So I think we just defined what the Russian map's going to look like. Russia will take Kharkov, move down to Dnipropetrovsk, take Mykolaiv, recapture the right bank of Kherson, and then drive into Odessa. They're in the process of taking Kharkov right now as we speak. There's offensive operations and in that region. Russia's succeeding, having success, Kupiansk, Liman, and elsewhere. And Russia has the resources, to sustain this operation, which is an important thing because the Ukrainians don't have the resources to sustain this operation. At some point in time, the Ukrainians are going to have to withdraw precipitously. And you've heard the Ukrainian leadership talk about this. I mean, already Zaluzhny's talking about Marinka saying, there's no reason for us to hold that town anymore. We withdrew because we have to save people. And he said that Advika is going to fall as well because we have to save people. Well, you're not going to stabilize the battlefield because you don't have troops. They got to mobilize 500,000. And when I say 500,000, these aren't young, strapping 22-year-olds who are coming straight from the gym after eating a steak dinner, guys ready to fight. They're taking women, pregnant women. They're taking old men, young boys. They're even, I had to double check this because when I first read it, I'm like, no, this can't be true. But if you lost vision in an eye, you can come back. If you have a prosthetic arm, you can come back. They said they'll find jobs for you. You're not necessarily going to the front line, but you're going to be brought into the military and given a job that can replace an able-bodied person who can then go to the front line. 500,000 is what they need. Why? Why so many? Because they've taken heavy losses. We've been talking about it. Ukrainians still won't publicize their figures, but the bottom line is, Ukraine has lost more than 500,000 men. More than 500,000 men. And now they desperately need to replace them. And the timetable of this is, again, it's untenable. The faster you gather these resources, these human resources, and put them on the front line, the less capable they'll be. They need to be trained. And that training, if you're going to be effective on the battlefield, has to take place over the course of months. Ukraine doesn't have months. They have days, maybe weeks. And if you take somebody, and the other thing is motivation. You can get a lot with motivated people. I mean, I can take a person who doesn't have the skill set, but if they're motivated, they want to be there. My job then is to help them survive the initial phase of combat where they learn on the job. And then they become survivors and fighters and all that stuff because they want to be there. Russia's recruiting 1,500 guys a day to serve in the special military operation. Why? Because they want to be there. They believe in the cause. Ukraine is going to have to go beat up people. They go to gyms and they strip the gym membership. They go to restaurants and pull people out. And you think these people want to be there? If they wanted to be there, they'd have been to the recruiting office already saying, sign me up. These are people who are avoiding military service. They're talking about bringing in hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians who have fled Ukraine into the West. You really think somebody who already left Ukraine, they voted with their feet saying, we don't want to be on the front line. Now, if they come in, they're going to be like, oh, what the heck? I'll be a good soldier. I'll learn to fight. I'll die for my country. No, these people don't want to do it. So the Ukrainian army is falling apart as we speak. So they're going to have to make precipitous decisions like to withdraw to the Dnieper River, which makes Russia's task that much easier. Speeds up the process of taking Kharkov, Dnipropetrovsk, Mykolaiv. And this is why some Russian senior people who I've talked to are talking about a potential move on Odessa sometime in the May-June timeframe. That seems a little optimistic to me, but then again, I'm not privy to the Russian military planning. But the bottom line is when this war ends, and it will end, and Russia will win, I think you're going to see Russia absorbing 4 new territories into Novorossiya: Odessa, Mykolaiv, Dnipropetrovsk, and Kharkov.
Well, and what's interesting about that is the economic potential of the new regions in Russia. They're bringing in a new land, but the economic potential as far as having coasts, as industrial potential, the areas that can grow wheat and grow things. So this, it's interesting that Lloyd Austin says, well, we're doing this to weaken Russia, but you're actually bringing in basically they're picking the best parts of Ukraine, industrially, steel mills, there are mines, you name it, all of this. So Russia is going to be, not only are they going to have more people, millions of more new people, they're going to have a much more economic potential, et cetera. So this thing has backfired in a grand manner for the neocon project of Ukraine, Scott.
Yeah, look, you go back and look at Soviet posters and maps and economic based maps of the 1930s. The Donbass region was the economic heart of Russia. And they show that Donbass beats and Russia works, Russia lives. This has always been this resource heavy area, and it was always Russian. It wasn't until politically they gave it to this new thing called Ukraine that it became Ukrainian. But it's always been extraordinarily important for the economy of the Soviet Union and then later Ukraine. When Russia lost access to the Donbass resources with the fall of the Soviet Union, they sought to, go to other areas. So Russia's a big country with a lot of resources and to develop things. But now they're getting the Donbass back. It's, they're getting the heart back.
Didn't they build ships? Isn't that where they built a lot of ships and built a lot of military hardware in Ukraine?
In the Black Sea region in Odessa, going up Mykolaiv, a big shipbuilding. That potential will be revived. Dnipropetrovsk, near there is town Pavlograd. That's where they build missiles. That could be revived. Although I don't know if you want a strategic missile factory that close to Ukraine. It depends what Ukraine's going to look like afterwards and who's going to be governing it. But the point is, a lot of Soviet era capacity is being returned to Russia, and also again agriculturally. This is the black soil of Ukraine is some of the most fertile soil in the world, and Russia, which is already a major producer of grains, will absorb this capability on and Ukraine will be denied this capability. This is destroying Ukraine as a modern nation state. This is where the West has to hang its head in shame, because Russia didn't start out this conflict to do this to Ukraine. If you take a look at the peace agreement that was initialed in March of 2022, Russia was going to return everything but Crimea to Ukraine. I mean, the Donbass, there would have to be some sort of referendum, but Russia wasn't encouraging sustained independence. They were going to encourage the Donbass to do something, probably to go back to Ukraine as part of an overall political settlement to bring peace. But Russia wasn't seeking to absorb 40% of Ukraine into Russia. It's the collective West that's used Ukraine as a proxy that's created the requirement for this to happen for Russian security. And so, this is the end of Ukraine, literally the end of Ukraine. And once you start carving it up, I mean, there's Hungarian portions in Transcarpathia that the Hungarians have already said, we don't like it that they're under this Banderist, racist government. We're not happy with that. So once you start seeing big chunks carved off, the Hungarians might come in and grab a piece, and then the Poles will talk about Western Ukraine, and that may be part of a settlement. Who knows? But the point is, Ukraine, as the state that it was, this large, physically large, economically dominant, or at least potential to be dominant nation state, it's over. It's dead. It's finished. The Ukrainian experiment has failed, and Ukraine will become this tiny little rump state with absolutely zero meaningful economic potential, and it will be a perpetual, third world nation that will suck the life out of the European Union. So, congratulations to EU. You bought it. you own it.
Finland, I did want to ask you about this. So the U.S. now, Finland has signed an agreement that the U.S. can move into their bases. As Maduro said to the guy in Guyana, you just invited the devil in your house. You just invited Victoria Nuland and Sullivan and Blinken into your country. You don't have a country anymore. So you got a when people look at Finland and they say this gigantic country, I think they got 6 million people, 5.9 or something. And as I said, I live in the very small state of Maryland. We got 6 million people in Maryland. I don't think the Russians are, horrified that the Finn army is going to be rolling across St. Petersburg. But with the U.S. putting bases in there, God only knows what missiles and et cetera they're putting in there. The Finns have done a very stupid thing, I believe, and placed themselves in great jeopardy because the geographic location is the biggest threat to Russia, and now they're bringing, the U.S. military into their home. Your thoughts on Finland?
Well, first of all, when we talk about bringing the U.S. military in, that doesn't mean what it used to mean. What are we bringing in? Ford headquarters, planners, logistics. But what kind of logistics? Real, meaningful sustainability, or is this all superficial? The United States is, we have a 60,000, manpower shortfall in recruiting. So, we're building new bases in Finland. Where are we getting the men and women to put in these bases? I think what you're seeing is very superficial presence. It's more political than real. It allows the United States to rapidly deploy a Marine battalion. Now, I'm a Marine. I love the Marine Corps. Marine battalion is a very lethal fighting force, but it's just a battalion, guys. It can't do much anymore, and it doesn't have any armor anymore. It's a light infantry unit that works well in the Arctic, but its survivability in the modern battlefield without a Marine division, then a Marine expeditionary force, followed by an Army Corps, because that's the way it normally works. The Marine battalion sees a beachhead. Marine brigades expand the beachhead, Marine divisions push inward, and then the Army takes over the fight. We don't have that ability anymore. Don't have it. So we can put a battalion in, and then what? So the Finns have bought off on fantasy, the fantasy of NATO power projection. The United States is putting these bases in there for rapid deployment capability because we told the Finns, we'll be there for you. But rapid deployment of what? What are we sending? Remember, the closer we get, when we go into Finland, we're getting very close to what? The Russians. And so the closer we get to the Russians, the easier it is for the Russians to hit us. And it's just stupid. Nobody's thought this through. This is some of the dumbest things in the world. It's like what we were doing in Poland. We had an ability to build this, forward defense, or this defensive belt in Germany, that once we established it, we could project into Poland if Russia were ever to attack. But what we've done instead is dislocate from the logistical base in Germany for deploying to Poland, but we don't have the ability to sustain it. And so we've got this capability in Poland that looks good, but if we ever had to go to war, it would die overnight. The same thing if we go into Finland. It is a joke. It's a tragic joke because now the Finns have to foot the bill. You think the United States is going to pay for this infrastructure development? We're saying, no, we're coming in with a couple of staff sergeants, a couple of staff officers, and all that stuff. But you got to build the base. You've got to build the infrastructure. You've got to host it. You've got to pay the cost for hosting, et cetera. And the Finns are going, wait a minute. And in addition to this, we've got to rebuild our military, expand it. And guys, the Russians they just made a new military district outside of St. Petersburg, and they got 70,000 borscht-eating Russian killers that are forming up right there. And what the hell do we do about that? How many guys you send in? How many Marines you sending in? 600? There's 70,000 Russians in St. Petersburg right now. Get ready to kill us. This is the reality of it. Finland is stupid, 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 stupid. Hopefully Sweden's looking at it going, yeah, no, we're going to save our economy. The Finnish economy will collapse because of this. They can't afford to be a member of NATO. And it gives NATO nothing but additional weakness. NATO, everybody talks about overextending Russia. You haven't overextended Russia. Russia has success. Remember, we got a 60,000 manpower shortfall in recruiting in the United States Army. Russia has successfully expanded its military from 900,000 to about 1.35 million, heading towards 1.5 million. They're growing. And these are volunteers. These are professional soldiers. These are guys that are falling in on equipment being produced by a defense industrial base that's very efficient. Man, Russia's not getting weaker here by the expansion of NATO. This is part of NATO's fantasy. NATO is becoming fatally weakened because now by bringing in Finland, you didn't expose Russia. You didn't extend Russia. You extended yourself. You think Finland can defend that border with Russia? Hell no. You don't think Russia could punch through and take Helsinki and secure the coast anytime it wanted? It can. And you think a U.S. Marine Infantry Battalion is going to stop them? This is stupidity in the extreme. Finland should go down as a case study of, when NATO collapses, and it will collapse, the Finnish expansion is going to be one of the triggers that led to it, because it's creating an unsustainable situation. NATO is having trouble supporting, the deployment of battle groups in the Baltics. Now they're talking about expanding them to brigade size, and the Germans are going, we're going to send an armor brigade, but no tanks because we don't have any tanks. The British, we're going to build it up, but we don't know how because we don't have any men either. It's a joke. NATO is a joke. And now, they can't sustain this Baltic deployment. They can't sustain the Polish deployment. And now they're bringing Finland in. It's just stretching resources that don't exist to create a capability that will never manifest itself. And all that's happened is that Russia has responded and has strengthened itself. Russia's stronger, NATO's weaker.
I did want to ask you about this, something you mentioned, and that is the issue of recruitment in the U.S. We're falling short and the numbers are getting lower and lower. Two things. Number one, what I hear from the mainstream, well, I'll put it like this. Conservative media says this. It's because the military is too woke, right? Which, I ain't into all the woke stuff right off the bat. Here's what I think. Of course, I don't know. The Democrats probably say it's disinformation. It's Garland Nixon and Scott Ritter with their malinformation, misinformation, and any other suffix that they can find to put before the word information. But I tend to think, Scott, that it is people just simply saying, a lot of young people looking at Gaza, looking at these crazy foreign policy crap stuff, because young people, like I talk to young people, a lot of them say, I don't watch TV, I only watch YouTube. I watch a Rumble. Now the young people are not watching the mainstream news. So they're seeing people like us and other people. They're getting the reality of the U.S. empire. And I think it's not the woke military or this or that really drives it. I think it's people saying, I would be happy to protect my country, but I don't want to be projected, protect, not project. I don't want to project the empire and project the madness of Tony Blinken or Nikki Haley or any of these other morons. I think that's a bigger part of it, that younger people are actually looking at policy. Sure, people are unhealthy, mental illness, drugs, things of that. But I think a lot of it is people are looking at it and saying, I'm not protecting my country. These people are crazy. I don't want to do what they're asking me to do. Anyway, but I wasn't in the military. You were. What are your thoughts on that, Scott Ritter?
To join the military is a big thing. It's a major, decision point for a young American, whether you're a man or a woman, or these days, a man and a woman. But the point is, when you make that decision, you're literally, this isn't the draft military anymore. It's not obligation of duty. It's you are making the decision to obligate yourself. It's volunteer. So what motivates you? And that's an important aspect of all this. What motivates you? When I joined the military in 1979, we were in the post-Vietnam era, and the military sucked. It was racist. It was broken. It was still demoralized. There was still a lot of hangover from Vietnam in the military. But I joined because, frankly speaking, I joined the Marines because of two recruiting posters. One had a recruit standing there scared to death, and a drill instructor in his face, and it said, "We never promised you a rose garden." And I went, "Yeah, baby, I want that. That's what I want. I want to be challenged in that way. I want somebody to challenge me, to turn me into a man so that I can go out and I can defend my country." The other one was, if everybody could be a Marine, there wouldn't be a Marine Corps, meaning that it's very selective, that this isn't just something that anybody can do, that you have to qualify for this. You have to push yourself to become a better person physically, mentally, morally. And that's the military I joined. I know there's a lot of people out there, this guy, you bought into a load of horror hogwash. Maybe, but they got me. They got me into the system, and I believed in that system. I loved that system. I wanted to be part of that system. I wanted to defend my country using that system. And defending my country meant I go where my government orders me to go. I wasn't sitting here with any, geopolitical constitutional debate. I showed up at 29 Palms, and they handed me the intelligence contingency plan for the op plan to go into Iran, to take Bandar Abbas and Chabahar. I didn't sit there and go, well, is there a Security Council resolution that authorized this? I mean, what is the constitutional basis? I went, okay, shoot, let's do this. Look at the targeting, update the targeting factors, look at the planning, logistical, redo the intelligence support package, boom, and go, okay, I'm ready to go to war against Iran if my country ever orders me to go to war against Iran. That was my mindset. That was the mindset of everybody with me. And I saw it in the Army. I saw it in the Air Force. I saw it in the Navy. Patriots who signed up for their for military service voluntarily to do what their country ordered them to do. But the country's changed. We're not that, back then we had the Ronald Reagan, shining city on the hill. I bought into that whole thing. We believed in that though. Again, I know there's going to be people like, oh, bull, what are Scott? Maybe you're right. Doesn't matter. I volunteered to serve that. I believed in that, and a whole bunch of people believed in that. What do people believe in today? What does people, we've become somewhat jaundiced, I guess, especially after 9/11. 9/11, a huge surge of patriotism. Man, if they could have tapped that properly, America would have been unbeatable. And I'm not talking about global domination. It was patriotism combined with the world saying, we're on your side, America. We're on your side. You were wronged. We're here to work with you. And if we had found a way to capture both of those, man, this would be a completely different world today. But instead, we became arrogant. And we said, we don't need you. You're either with us or against us. We're not here to debate. We're going to do X, Y, and Z. We're going to impose our will on the world. And in doing so, we got involved in a quagmire in Afghanistan, a quagmire in Iraq, a quagmire in Yemen, a quagmire in Syria. And people are going, I don't want to be part of that. That's not reflective of my values. That's not who I am. That's not what I am. People started to question this. And not only that, we were the bad guys. We weren't the good guys. I mean, I joined the military believing that I was the good guy. I know, again, all the commenters out there, you were never the good guy, Scott. Maybe, doesn't matter. I believed I was. So I joined the military. People today look at the United States and how we project ourselves around the world, and they say, we ain't the good guys anymore. Why do I want to be part of the military system that is doing all this harm around the world? And look who we ally ourselves with. The Israelis are committing genocide in Gaza as we speak. And there's people going, I don't support that. And if I don't support that, why do I want to join the military and be called upon to support that with my life? I'm not happy about that. With Ukraine, people are looking at that going, no, don't want any part of that. China, why? Why do we want to go to war with China? And so there's just people that don't buy into the system anymore. So that's one of the problems, is the motivation to get people across the line. But the other thing is, who joins the military? I mean, the military is not meant to be a reflection of American society. It's not. You don't have freedom of speech in the military. Constitutional rights don't apply because you're there to do or die. I mean, one of the great powers that a commissioned officer had is to say, platoon up, advance, and you had to. Into the fire, die, if you were ordered to do so by now. Now, fortunately, we had Marine officers who were smart enough to go, hey, everybody's going to die. We're going to come up with a different way of doing this. But the bottom line is you had to obey the lawful orders given to you without question. if they're lawful, and without hesitation, because to hesitate in the face of a determined enemy means you die. So it requires a mindset. The Marine recruiters in the 1980s really liked athletes. They really liked guys with team. They were attracted to guys and gals that who played team sports, who knew how to operate as a team, who knew what it meant to get up in the morning and train, to get physically fit, to be able to balance the competing requirements of sports, organized sports, and the rest of life, to balance that. Those were skill sets that were transferable to the military, team building, etc. Physical fitness is part of your core values, all that. It's a different mindset. Not everybody's programmed to be in the military, but the people that joined in the 1980s, and I would say even the early 1990s, wanted to be there because they believed it reflected who they were and what they were. Today, there's a lot of individuality. The last thing you want in the military is individuality. There's a room for it. You need creativity. You need people to think, but you need conformity. And Americans today aren't conformists. They're anti-conformists. You also need, to be honest, to be a meat-eating murderer, because the military is about one thing and one thing only. It's killing the enemy, killing them far more efficiently than they kill you. And so if you don't have the ability to eat raw meat and lunge into the enemy and slaughter them, to wade into them, if you can't make that part of the essence of who you are, you're not going to do well in the military today. Guys, look at what's happening in Gaza. It's not a woke fest, okay? This isn't guys and gals holding hands, doing TikTok videos and all that. They're getting killed there. The Israeli Defense Force is being slaughtered on that battlefield. Hamas is fighting a hard fight, but they're being killed too. It is blood. Look at what's happening with Ukraine and Russia, the lethality of the modern battlefield, okay? If you waltz into the Ukrainian-Russian battlefield saying, well, tomorrow we're going to have a briefing on transgendered rights, and we're going to talk about red zone, yellow zone, green zone. Does everybody, boom, you're dead, because you're not thinking about killing the enemy while the enemy's thinking about killing you. So we have the necessity to create the kind of military that our society isn't capable of producing anymore. And one of the problems is that we're trying to mirror our military like society. I just listened to an Air Force Lieutenant General give a speech that talked about how she selects squadron commanders. And she said, yeah, you have to be good at your job. Well, thank you, General.
That'd be nice, yeah.
Commanders should be good at their job. I get it. But if you're not, for instance, she said, I don't know if I'd promote an unmarried officer to be a squadron commander. Because if you don't know about the family, then you don't know about family values. And if you don't have family values and identify with that, then you can't be an effective leader. What the hell are you talking about? The best battalion commanders I had in the Marine Corps were bachelors, because they spent their entire life eating raw meat and learning how to kill people. That's what you want as a military leader. You don't want some, the red light, green light. No, yes, I'm not saying that, look, they weren't insensitive. The best commanders care for their Marines. But there was a time when you couldn't enlist in the Marine Corps if you were married, because it's not meant to be for married people. You join the Marine Corps, you're going through some hellacious training, then you're going into deployed status and you're focused on doing that. And it wasn't until you got to the rank of corporal that you're deemed to be mature enough to handle marriage. Now, we've changed that, but it changed the Marine Corps. Suddenly became a very expensive place, because now we had to take care of families, and families impact deployment, impact training. We had Marines that were working their day job. Ladies and gentlemen, the Marine Corps is 24/7, 365 days a week. There ain't no day job. It is your only job. But you have Marines that were working their day job, but because of the demands of their family, had to go get a night job. And so I had Marines showing up at work, instead of saying, all right, boss, let's go. They go, I need another cup of coffee because I worked the midnight shift at Staples. You shouldn't be working a midnight shift at Staples. Marine Corps needs you to get your 6 to 8 hours of sleep that night, to be well rested, to come in the morning, to begin the process of doing what Marines are supposed to do. But we have a military today that is just fundamentally broken in terms of the focus of war fighting. We don't have a military that's capable of fighting wars anymore. We have a military that's incapable of sustaining itself because it can't recruit people to join. Why don't people want to join the military today? Because the military is no longer the military. It's no longer something separate. It's something different. It's not about we never promised you a rose garden. It is we're giving you the exact rose garden that grew in your mama's house because we're bringing you into mama's house. You know, we're going to make it as close. We're going to replicate civilian life as close as possible. And the other thing is the emphasis they're putting on this diversity. Again, for America, civilian society, I think diversity is it's a decision that the American people have to collectively make, you know, how they want to go forward. It's a democratic problem that will be solved democratically. That's great. It doesn't matter what I believe. What matters is what the majority of Americans believe. And if the majority of Americans say we're going to head in this direction, hey, and I don't agree with it, then I have to come up with a better way of articulating to get more people to agree with me so that we can alter that. But if I can't, that means I'm in the minority. My rights will be protected, but they go the direction they go. Welcome to America. That's what makes us a great country. But that does not equate to an effective military fighting force. And today we are incapable to produce this force if we're continuously trying to mirror image society. And I think that's one of the big problems with recruiting is people no longer want to fight and die for America. And the people that would want to fight and die for America don't want to join a woke military. I mean, the wokeness is killing the U.S. military.
Gaza. I watched a video the other day. You know, there's Netanyahu is still doing big talk. We're going to cream them. We're going to smush them. We're going to crush them into the ground. We're not going to stop until they drop to their knees and beg us for mercy, right? And then I watch these videos. You know, we talk about training and everything. There's certain things that are more important and bigger than training. I watched this one video. One of the Hamas guys literally has this satchel-like charge. Has like a bag, right? He comes out of this house, tunnel, whatever, and you see big old tanks sitting there pointing in this direction. I guess they're all batting down. They're not looking behind them, obviously. Nobody's apparently looking in the back. This guy looks around. He doesn't appear to have carrying a gun or anything. He's literally carrying like a knapsack. He runs over to the tank, and I'm thinking, nobody's noticing. There's a guy running over to him in the rubble. Yeah. He runs alongside of whatchamacallit. He heaves this thing physically, heaves it under the tank, turns around, runs back in unscathed, kablooey. The tank blows up, and then secondary explosions, I guess, from the shells and what have you in the tank, blows the tank to smithereens. And I'm thinking, when you have that kind of motivation, even that guy ain't got to be trained. You just say to that guy says, I want to fight the enemy. Give me something to do. Here, take this. The odds of you surviving ain't real well. That's okay. Point me to the enemy. They're right over there in the tank. I want you to run over to that tank, unguarded, undefended, on foot, heave this thing under it, and then just run back in this tunnel. And the guy does it. And I'm like, that's another thing that's important, that training is great, but motivation. His family's probably been killed. His extended, at that point, he's like, what the hell? Everybody I know has been, you sons of guns are going to pay. Somebody's got to pay, and it's going to be these guys in that tank right there. Your thoughts on the talk of, we're hearing of, Netanyahu. We're going to crush him, kill him, destroy him. And then I turn it on and I see that Hezbollah is still hitting positions, and they're showing video. You can say what you're doing. They got videos. Guys, taking tanks out. I'm not saying every tank is destroyed, but that one didn't work out well. Anyway, your thoughts on this whole rubble fighting and the big talk from Netanyahu and his crew that we're winning, we're going to win, we're going to wipe these people out. Scott.
Well, let's just start with the fact that Benjamin Netanyahu cannot hold a vote amongst his war cabinet because they're all against him. So he's a dictator right now. He's ruling as a dictator. Because when he tries to vote for expanded operations and for this, the war cabinet's like, no, not going to happen. We just had a former chief of staff come out and say that Hamas has defeated the Israeli Defense Force. This is a former chief of staff of the Israeli Defense Force who's come out and said Hamas has won, Israel's lost, and that the greatest threat to Israel today is Netanyahu, and that we need to get rid of him. And you're seeing this over and over again. So understand, everything that Netanyahu says is done in a political environment where his only chance of survival is to be this hard-nosed hawk and push for more war. But Israel's not buying into it. His days are numbered. Look, I said from the very beginning that Hamas, they planned and executed the greatest military raid in modern history on October 7th. I know people, oh, murder. No, it was the greatest military raid in modern history. No military force has come up with anything close to this in terms of its audacity, its complexity, and its success. And a key aspect of a military raid is you go out and do what you got to do, and then you fall back in on prepared positions. And that's what Hamas did. They came back to Gaza underground into a tunnel network, 500 kilometers, was built for one thing and one thing only: repelling Israeli attacks from the air and from the ground. So you got this anthill of tunnels going everywhere that have been designed not only to provide command and control logistics sustainability, but offensive capability means tunnels go up to allow the attackers to go out and attack into Israel or elsewhere, and defensive capability to respond to any attack. They're like little cellular structures. If Israel breaks into one, Hamas can seal it off and protect the hive. That's why pumping water in is so stupid, because you pump it in, they go seal it off. That's it. You didn't get anywhere else with that water, did you? Israel doesn't have a solution to that, but then you complicate it by bombing the hell out of this urban environment, this densely packed urban environment above, bringing it collapsing down on the ground. In addition to the videos that you saw of that guy, and I saw that too, and I'm just sitting there going, first thing I'm going is, he's going to die on the second step, because surely the armor in an exposed position has deployed infantry overwatch to prevent just that from happening. So surely there's a sniper team, there's a machine gun team, there's a infantry fire team out there scanning their respective zone, going, oh, there's an idiot, pop, 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 dead. Okay, that has to happen, right? Well, no, it didn't happen, because the Israelis are scared, poorly disciplined, poorly trained, and this is the reality. That merc of a tank may look good, but the guys inside are scared to death. And the reason why they don't have infantry cover is the infantry's scared to death. Why? Not just because some dude's going to come out with a satchel and throw it under a tank. It's that by dropping this structure, you saw the other videos. I mean, that the Hamas guys are looking through a labyrinth of broken structures, getting this one hole, and then they sit there and they got one shot at the tank as it's right there as it comes through. Now, if you're in the tank and you're driving through, you can't see, even if you got infantry overwatch. They're not, they're looking on the surface, but they're not peering right through that single gap to the Hamas guy inside, who has a weapon designed for this, and who sits there and takes the shot, aims, pop, fires, bam, hits the tank over and over and over again. Hamas has studied the terrain, the new terrain, the collapsed terrain. They've picked their vantage points, and they just wait for the Israelis to come in and fill that hole, fire, kill, run, get out of the way, move. Normally, you'd show videos. I mean, unfortunately, everybody does it. When you kill your enemy, you put their bodies out and you lay them out and you go, well, we killed these attackers here. This is how. Israel's not showing any Hamas bodies, are they? When was the last time Israel said, here's all the Hamas guys we've been killing? Because they ain't killing that many Hamas guys. They're killing a lot of Palestinian civilians. They're rounding up men and claiming they're Hamas, even though they're not. They're teachers, they're lawyers, they're doctors, they're this, but they're not the Hamas fighters. The Hamas fighters, now I'm not saying Hamas isn't losing people. They are. But Israel isn't slaughtering them. And Hamas is adapting to this battlefield where they have freedom of movement below the ground, and they're able to pick their places above the ground and inflict horrific losses on the Israelis. And as the Israelis become more scared, more undisciplined, they're making more mistakes and they're losing more people. The way you survive in warfare is to have your head on a swivel. I mean, you got to be looking this way. You got situational awareness. You got to be well trained. You got to
like
have
on the football field. Like on the football field,
absolutely,
right? If you're looking wrong, they can't do it anymore in the NFL. But in the old days, if you're looking the other way and there's a turnover and you didn't realize it, and now you're a blocker, you find yourself, somebody's going to plant themselves right between your. That was the goal, to find somebody looking the other way and just.
The hits I made in college on special teams against guys who weren't looking would have got me permanently evicted from football today, but they were clean hits back then. Situational awareness, and you have to trust your teammates. You have your job to do, And you can't worry about what's going to happen in this sector. You just have to assume that your teammates doing that job. Well trained, that's gone. The Israelis are not well trained. They're not. It's a reserve force. They're not that good. They're poorly disciplined. These guys, if you take a look at what they're doing in terms of mocking the Palestinians and so, that's a sign of a poorly disciplined force. Their goals are revenge, but revenge only takes you so far, because revenge works, until you step in the ring with Mike Tyson and then he hits you and you realize that, oh God, this revenge thing ain't so good anymore because I'm getting the crap beat out of me. Hamas is just sitting there beating the living crap out of the Israeli Defense Force. But it's not just Hamas. Hezbollah. Again, Israeli defense personnel speaking to Haaretz, a Israeli newspaper, have said that Hezbollah, it's not just, because Israel likes to say we're going to, put the fight into southern Lebanon and make Hezbollah pay a price. What the Israelis have said is Hezbollah has taken over operational control of northern Israel, that Hezbollah is dictating the terms of engagement in northern Israel. They are dictating Israeli activity inside northern Israel. And if you think Hamas has tunnels, I'm here to tell you right now that if this fight expands, you're going to see Hezbollah fighters popping up in places in northern Israel nobody's imagined. They're going to be seizing Israeli towns, Israeli villages. They're going to be launching operations on the ground into Haifa. They'll be hitting the Israelis where they ain't. It'll be a completely different war than the one that the Israeli Defense Force has envisioned, and the Israeli Defense Force is recognizing this, and this is why they're telling Netanyahu, do not go to war with Hezbollah. We will get our asses handed to us. That's the fact. The Houthi, there's no solution to the Houthi. I mean, they what they're doing is just stunning. But it's a reflective of the reality of modern warfare, where these minor military forces, when given advanced military technology, can equalize the military equation. The mighty U.S. Navy with the Dwight D. Eisenhower carrier battle group can't control the Red Sea passage. The Houthi, and what it means is that we can't control the Strait of Hormuz. You remember when the U.S. said, hey, everybody, don't worry about Iran. We're the U.S. Navy. We're going to come rolling in there, and we're going to guarantee that the Strait of Hormuz will be open. Well, guess what the Houthi just proved? That that's a bunch of malarkey. That when Iran wants to shut down the Strait of Hormuz, it's shut down permanently. We can't do anything about it because our aircraft carrier will be sunk before it gets there. All of our ships will be sunk before they get there. The Persian Gulf is a giant death trap for the U.S. Navy. That's what modern technology means. And the Houthi just proved that, because the U.S. government, U.S. Navy, had to back down from, Lloyd Austin. I forget, was it Prosperity Guardian?
Yeah, right.
Guardian Prosperity or something, Guardian Prosperity, Coalition of the Willing, all coming together. Everybody else went, not so fast. We don't want to be part of this. We don't support what you're doing with Israel in Gaza. So we don't want to be a part of this. Plus, what happens if this expands and Iran come in? Have you thought about the consequences? Of course, America hasn't thought about the consequences. Garland, we can't do anything. Israel's getting beat tactically, operationally, and strategically. Netanyahu's days are numbered. I think that he will be forced out of office in the very near future because he's failing across the board. He hasn't succeeded at anything. A huge embarrassment on October 7th. He was going to be the war leader that led the counterattack. His Israeli Defense Force is being humiliated in Gaza. They're impotent against Hezbollah. They can't do anything against the Houthi. Their economy is in tatters because of nothing's coming in to the port in Elliott, and the 70,000 displaced from the north, 20,000 displaced from Gaza. That's 90,000 people in the middle that have to be cared for. No economic activity, no hope in sight. It's over. Israel lost. I mean, there'll be some fighting, screaming, kicking, and dying to go, but Israel can't win. They can't achieve the objective of destroying Hamas politically and militarily. Hamas is emerging from this stronger than it ever was. It literally, militarily, they're humiliating the Israeli Defense Force, humiliating them as we speak. Politically, Hamas is more popular today than it's ever been. If there was an election today amongst the Palestinian people, not just in Gaza, but in the West Bank, Hamas is estimated to win between 71 and 76% of the vote. The Palestinian Authority has no legitimacy anymore, moral legitimacy. Israel thinks that they're going to be able to move forward with the Palestinians without a Hamas presence. Dream on. Hamas has been empowered. They're here. They're not going anywhere. It's Israel that's going to change. Netanyahu will be out, his coalition will crumble, and Israel's going to have to pick a leadership that's going to have to learn to deal with the new reality of the world.
Scott, I think in what we've seen in the last couple of years, power is only power until you use it, then it becomes force. And once you use force, you become exposed. It's like a punch. I always say this: the worst thing you can do oftentimes is throw a punch, because if you miss, you're open. Or if you throw a punch and somebody traps it against you, blocks it, your arm's out here being blocked, throwing a punch, taking that assertive move, you better win. Because if you miss, people will make you pay, right?
Or if you hit and they go,
yeah, and now they know, oh my gosh, this punt, they ain't scared of you anymore. So
you didn't knock them out.
You're better off to continue to intimidate and scare people than to act, because then they find out if you're real or not. Here's my point. We've found out more about what modern warfare in the last 2 years. Here's what we know: missiles rule. Right? I don't care what you got. If you can't stop a Kinzhal hypersonic coming in, whatever you got is done. It's doomed. It's finished. What we found out is drones rule. You know what I mean? Every way, shape, or form, people are now using drones. Yep. Men can't concentrate in big groups or they're going to be blown to hell. Right? It appears to me that the U.S. Navy is kind of worthless, because you got now the kinds of missiles that we have. Oh, I mean, they say, oh, we blocked this missile, or this missile came at us, right? But if you send a salvo with 30 missiles, you overwhelm them. You know what I mean? So little Yemen can throw a missile or a drone here and there, and the U.S. Navy can say, we intercepted 12 missiles of this drone. But if it's just even Hezbollah, a non-state actor, they can put enough missiles, good missiles at you. You can't block a salvo. You're going to hit, maybe go down. So the U.S. Navy, it is not the intimidating force that it's a vulnerability and a liability that they're figuring, how far do we have to stay from the combat zone to be out of range of modern day missiles? The ground forces, we don't have the numbers to put ground forces on the air. There's now, S-400s, there's now anti-aircraft stuff all over. The nature of war in the last 2 years has been what the American planners and militaries thought was the nature of war has been blown to hell in the last 2 years. Your thoughts?
No, you're 100% correct. Again, when I was in the Marine Corps, we did combined arms warfare, maneuver warfare. And it was premised on the notion that we weren't going to take Iwo Jima type casualties anymore. We didn't want to build any more monuments to dead Marines, that we were going to fight smarter. And so we combined, tactical skill, operational audacity with, technological superiority, or in some cases supremacy, that we were going to be better equipped, better trained, better prepared to carry out war. And gosh, I think Operation Desert Storm sort of proved that way of fighting against the world at that time, the fourth largest army in the world in Iraq, we dominated them. But Iraq didn't have the same weapon set that we had. They didn't have the technology that we had. I mean, what would have happened if Iran had a whole bunch of Javelin missiles? And now we start coming in with our mass tank formations, and the Iranians go, poof, or the Iraqis go, poof, 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 and all of a sudden, bam, there goes one, bam, there goes one, bam, there goes one, bam. And before we even advanced 300 meters into the enemy defense lines, we've lost 10% of our armor force. We moved to 500 meters, we've lost 20%. And suddenly we run out of steam. We're now in a death trap. They hit us with other things, and we have to pull back, losing 50, 60% of our armor force. That's why you're not seeing big aero operations between Russia and Ukraine today, because the lethality of the system. Take a look at the tactics. No more hey diddle diddle straight up the middle. No more big armor push through. Man, the way they fight today is they come in with small groups of infantry dispersed, backed up by one or two tanks with electronic warfare and air defense positioned. Why? Drones. Drones have changed the way of the war and the way of the world. And drones have become the nemesis for those Javelin crews, because it used to be, if you're a Javelin crew, I'd have my, forward observers out there looking for you. You pop off, I'll try and call in mortars or artillery to suppress you, but you already killed the tank and then you displace, it's tough game. Now you're a Javelin crew, and all of a sudden this little little mini rotor thing comes up and stares at you. You're screwed. It now saw you. So it's either going to adjust fire on you, and there ain't nothing you can do to get away. You run over this position, it sees you. Or it's going to call in its buddy drone. The FPV, the first person view kamikaze drone with a big old chunk of high explosive on it. Boom, it got you. So you can't have your everybody's underground now. If you take a look at the Ukrainian defensive positions, they're all underground. Every once in a while they pop up to look, but then they go underground. Why? Because if a drone sees you, you're going to die. The drone's going to come in and blow up your bunker, blow you up. Warfare's changed. You can't. I could not survive on the battlefield using the training that I had. I could not employ a Marine rifle platoon or rifle company using the tactics that I had learned, because they would be slaughtered by drones. The reality of it is we have to disperse more. Smaller teams of infantry working with armor, small groups. You can't put a large amount of tanks together; they die. You have to come in penny packets. The war has changed, but it's still very lethal. You don't lose 500,000 guys like the Ukrainians have, from pinpricks. It's lethal because of the massive firepower that's still brought in on it. It's just different kind of firepower, different kind of war. It's changed completely. But drones are the revolutionary. We talk about, what was the big weapon of World War I? The machine gun. The machine gun, you couldn't do Napoleonic advances against a machine gun. What was the big weapon of World War II? The tank. The big weapon today, drones. Drones have fundamentally changed the way we fight wars today. And if we're not prepared to do that, if we're not actively training to do that, if we're not, incorporating every aspect of drone warfare into everything we do, we're going to lose, because the Russians have, and the Chinese are looking at that. The Iranians are looking at that. The Houthi are looking at that. Hezbollah is looking at that. Hamas is looking at saying, yeah, we can do that. And you saw Hamas use some drones in their incorporated. Drone warfare has changed every aspect of modern warfare. And if you're not thinking about how you're going to use drones in the next battle, you're going to lose the next battle.
Scott Ritter, thanks a lot. Don't forget, everybody, go to Scott Ritter Extra. That's scottritterextra.com. All of Scott's work is there. And of course, there are ways there that you can support Scott and help him to continue to do his good work, his journalism, his travels, and etc. Thanks a lot, Scott. Certainly appreciate you taking your time. I know you're going to be gone for a few weeks. When will you be back?
I will return around the 23rd of January.
Okay, yeah, great. We'll talk, and everybody out there, we will get back with Scott shortly after he returns, and he can let us know about his travels. Thanks a lot, Scott. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Colin.
All right. All right, everyone. And don't forget, everything's scrolling across the bottom there. Patreon, PayPal, all of the above. Rockfin.com/Garland Nixon. Make sure you join me over there at Rockfin. Does not cost a dime. However, if you can afford it and if you choose, you can become a member on Rockfin. It's $14.99 a month. I certainly appreciate that. If you can, if you can help the channel, that's great. If not, just make sure you smash the like button. Share this on all your social media platforms. Peace. I'm out.